And very quickly, I want to add this because a lot of you have let me know that you have tried to register for the North Coast Woodstock on PayPal. PayPal for the North Coast Woodstock will open on February 1st. February 1st, the PayPal will be open. All right, so that's just so everybody has that information. All right, we're on page 155. And last week, we ended with Bill lifting the receiver in the lobby of the Mayflower Hotel after he had been tempted to drink. The obsession to drink had returned. He turned his thoughts. How many times does our book tell us to turn our thoughts to helping others? In other words, turn your thoughts to God's will. And then it said his sanity returned and he thanked God. His sanity returned and he thanked God. We are going to talk a lot more about that. The problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind. Remember, Moses Yoder used to say, my mind is my garden, my thoughts are my seeds. What will I harvest, flowers or weeds? The problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than in his body. So we turn our thoughts to what? Helping others. All of a sudden, the obsession is gone. Let's just keep that in our minds, all right? We talked last week about, and what I love about this chapter, I mean, we've seen it in every chapter, how I can identify as an alcoholic, as a sponsor, as a family member, right? We talked last week about Bill's 2 conversations before he left New York to come to Akron. And the first one with Lois, when Lois told him, nobody that you work with in these first 6 months has gotten sober, but you stayed sober doing it. Check 1. Check number 2, he talks to Dr. Silkworth, who tells him, stop preaching to people and establish identification by talking drunk to a drunk. Hence, the drunk-a-log in our stories. Without that, when I was new, if I came into a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, I didn't know anything about the 12 steps. If somebody got up and said, I'm not giving no drunk-a-log, I'm just going to spend an hour talking about the steps, I'd have been gone. Right. I'd have been asleep, more likely than not, because I had no frame of reference yet with the steps. But people didn't do that. They talked about their drinking, and it was a language I understood. If you talk to me after my first week of meetings, I was in treatment at Green Hall in Xenia, Ohio. We went to meeting every night. If you had talked to me after my first week of meetings, and you would have said, well, Ken, how about these steps? My response would have been, what steps? Now, I'm sure that they were talked about, something, but it went over my head. But if you would have said, how do you feel about these meetings? I want you to stay with me for a minute. I would have said to you, I know I'm in the right place. I know I'm in the right place. Because I identified, we speak a language in here. Y'all spoke a language in here that I could hear. I couldn't hear nobody else. I couldn't hear mom and them. I couldn't hear them in church. I couldn't hear the coaches, all the bosses, all these people in my life. I couldn't hear them, but I could hear you. Do anybody know what I'm talking about? Yeah. The value of identification. So Bill now comes to Akron, and the first person that he encounters will be the first time he tries this new approach, right? And what we're going to see is that our entire book and recovery working with others as we know it today is based on exactly what we're about to see. Actually, it's the format of this book. I call it the formula, but we'll talk about that later. But as a sponsor, my ears gotta open up because I'm about to see the classic 12-step call. So let's get into it. His call to the clergyman led him presently to a certain resident of the town who, though formerly able and respected, was nearing the nadir, and nadir means the height of alcoholic despair. Alcoholic despair. Would you underline them two words? Despair is despair, but alcoholic despair brings to me, this is just my experience, to a level of hopelessness that I never want to encounter again. Just absolute terror of the future, absolute hopelessness, helplessness. I talk about being in a place of cold-blooded, cold-hearted indifference to life. No day, no night, no right, no wrong, no God, no devil, no good, no evil. I just exist. The nadir of alcoholic despair. Does anybody feel that? Does anybody feel that? Okay, let's go on. It was the usual situation: home in jeopardy, wife ill, children distracted, bills in arrears, and standing damage. How many can identify with those things? Affects our family. What really? It bleeds into every area of our lives, doesn't it? Every area of our lives. Just this guy here that they're talking about, and we know it's Dr. Bob, burning his life to the ground and consuming everybody with him. Notice how it talked about the family. Let's go on. He had a desperate desire to stop, but saw no way out, for he had earnestly tried many avenues of escape. So what had Dr. Bob done prior to his meeting with Bill? Well, he had gone back to the church. He had joined the Oxford group. Now, Dr. Bob had been going to Oxford group meetings at the time when Bill came to Akron for a year and a half. A year and a half. Bill had been going for 6 months. So Dr. Bob had been going a full year longer than Bill had. However, what was the difference between the two? Bill was sober. Dr. Bob was not. Okay? What was the difference between the two? We're going to see that in these next few paragraphs. Let's continue. Painfully aware of being somehow abnormal. At what point did you realize that you were somewhat abnormal? At what point did you realize that? Right? It's like, my life does not look like the life of my peers. I went to college, right? So I'm in my early 20s, and it was one of my first kind of awakenings. I went to the wedding of my college roommate down in Columbus, and I got to see a bunch of the people that I had spent 5 years of my life with. And I saw they were married, they had children, they had houses, they had driver's licenses, they did not have POs, right? I'm looking now, I'm looking at them, right? And this wasn't one of them deals where I said to myself, man, these people don't know how to have no fun. No. It was a moment of truth about my life, because my life did not look like that. If you talked to me at that wedding reception, I would have told you that my life was like that, because I lied. I'm not gonna, how you doing, kid? Well, I'm doing all right. I go to court Thursday. Right? I'm looking at 1 to 3, but I got a good lawyer, I hope, right? Well, I just got suspended from work again, right? Well, you know, I've been paying for my parents' house, but they don't understand. I'm not telling nobody nothing like that. I'm down there, got some clothes on. You know, you got to go buy some clothes before you go to something like this, because you got to be fresh, right? I got my Mr. T starter kit around my neck, right? So I'm down here, right? Yeah, man, life's good. How y'all doing, right? And inside, I know I ain't like these people. And I don't know why I'm not like these people, but I'm not like these people. I got stuff going on in my life that they don't, and I know it. But I've been living a lie so long, even I believe. Even I believe. And then you have these little moments where the window opens a little bit and you see some truth. You see some truth. It said that Dr. Bob, it said he had a desperate, would you circle that word? Desperate desire to stop. There's a lady in Bellevue, Nebraska. Her name is Peggy, and some of y'all know Miss Peggy. And Miss Peggy spent her life, her and her husband, Mr. Martin, spent their life helping people in this fellowship. And we used to call Miss Peggy, she's in the assisted living now, but she was getting on airplanes and speaking in Alcoholics Anonymous for 40 years. And we used to call her the AA cheerleader. And Miss Peggy used to say, I pray you desperation. Yeah. She said, I wish I had a bottle of desperation that I could take to AA meetings and pass out to people sitting in the room, but I ain't got it. She said, but I got a God of my understanding who answers my prayer. She said, if you knew here tonight, I pray you desperation. Honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness, it says in Appendix 2, Spiritual Experience, in the back of the book. It said honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness are the 3 essentials of recovery. I call honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness the triplets. All triplets have a mother. In my life, the mother of honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness is something called desperation. And 3 months sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, I sat in a car in the back parking lot of Daly's Pub in downtown Sandusky, 3 months sober, and a birth took place in that car. Honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. Desperation gave birth to enough of those for me to ask for some help. I didn't say I got totally honest, totally open-minded, and totally willing. There was a birth that took place in that car, and I got honest, open-minded, and willing enough to be willing to give what you guys were telling me a chance. I've been sitting in meetings with you for 3 months, 3 times a day, sometimes 4 and 5, and I'm dying of untreated alcoholism. Don't drink and come to these meetings. It's not working for me. My alcoholism went untreated. I was working a program of attendance. Yeah. I pray you desperation if you're listening to me tonight, if you knew. Let's go on. All right. When our friend related his experience, would you highlight that and put a star by it? So now Bill is following what? The direction of Dr. Silkworth. He's not talking solution. He's not talking about the spiritual experience yet that he had in Towns Hospital. He said he related his experience. What did he talk about? His drinking. He talked to him about his drinking. Did I drink like he drank? Did I think like he thought? Did I feel like he felt? Did I do what he did? Yeah. Those are the 4 questions when I'm listening to somebody share their experience. Those are the 4 questions I was told to listen for. And I was told, if you'll do that, you'll be able to identify with the speaker, whether it's a 90-year-old lady who drank in her kitchen or somebody living down on Skid Row. Did I drink like they drank? Did I think like they thought? that obsessive thinking that only we can recognize? Did I feel like they felt? The hopelessness, the despair, the restlessness, the irritability, the discontentedness, terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair. Did I feel that way? Did I do what they did? Did I burn my life to the ground? Did I adversely affect the lives of every human being who I came into contact with, particularly those who cared anything about me? Answer those 4 questions, and you will be able to identify. So what we got here is Bill doing what Silkworth told him. He said, go talk drunk to a drunk. So he related his experience. What happened? Dr. Bob reacted to that. He said the man agreed that no amount of willpower he might muster could stop his drinking for long. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the first step, aren't we? We're talking about powerlessness. Already, Bill has made a connection. We are talking about powerlessness. Already, Dr. Bob is already conceding. Now, this meeting of the co-founders took place in the library of the Gatehouse on the Cyberlane Estate in Akron, Ohio. And many people listening to me right now in this room here in Sandusky, and those of you around the country, some of y'all have sat in that library. You have been in that room.
It's no bigger than this living room.
Dr. Bob's daughter, Sue, was a very good friend of mine. And when I asked her, because she was there, at that time, she was one of 2 people still living on this earth who were there when that meeting took place. And what she told me was that her father was so hungover and shaky that her mother, Ann, Ann had some clout in the house. Ann told Dr. Bob he was passed out the day before, that way he can't come. He bought a potted plant home for Mother's Day. He's more potted than the plant.
He's under the table.
But we'll be over tomorrow. So the next day, Dr. Bob said, as you can imagine, some of you know I wasn't feeling too good the next day. But Ann said, I don't care how you feeling, we going over there. So Dr. Bob said, I will give this bum 15 minutes because he ain't going to tell me nothing I don't already know. Sue said when they got to the house, they sat down to eat. And this is where it started. Dr. Bob was shaken so badly, he could not keep his food on his utensil. Bill Wilson sees that and identifies. Been there, done that. Dr. Bob, of course, is self-conscious and humiliated. Bill says, Doc, why don't we eat later? Let's go talk. Let's go talk. Dr. Bob said immediately there was a wave of relief that washed over him. This guy sees this. And Dr. Bob said, I was grateful. So they go back into this library for this 15-minute talk, and they emerge 5 hours later. 5 hours later. So that just sets the backdrop for you for what's going on here. We got this guy who's desperate and in alcoholic despair. Just doesn't believe that there's any way out. Let's continue here. A spiritual experience, he conceded, was absolutely necessary. Now, concession, circle the word conceded. Concession is internal. We concede to our innermost self. That's internal. A confession is external. I made those down at the courthouse. That's external, right? A concession is internal. Okay, so he conceded. Okay, this spiritual experience was absolutely necessary, but the price seemed high upon the basis suggested. So here he is saying, yes, I know I gotta have this spiritual experience. Why do you think I've been going to the Oxford group? Why do you think I went back to church? Why do you think I'm reading everything they give me? Why do you think I'm doing that? Because I understand. But then there's the word but. Now, my first sponsor used to say, when I would say but, he would look at me and say, what comes out of the but?
He'd say what?
What comes after butt?
He said, anytime you say but, you negate everything you said before that. Okay?
Love it.
Every time you say but, whatever you just said, you just canceled it out. So he says, I need a spirit of experience, but the price seems awful high on the basis suggested. So what had Bill done? Bill had shared with him the actions that Abby had given him so he could attain sobriety. What Dr. Bob was talking about specifically was amends. It was amends. That was where Dr. Bob drew the line, threw in the but. It was making amends. Let's see what he says here. He told how he lived in constant worry about those who might find out about his alcoholism. So he's constantly worried about people finding out, because obviously Dr. Bob is a physician. He is a proctologist. So he is concerned about the public learning that he has a drinking problem. I love the next line because it brings in the truth. He had, of course, the familiar alcoholic exception, or what I like to call delusion, that few knew of his drinking. Everybody knew of his drinking. But we always the last to know that they all know, don't we? We so self-absorbed. We actually believe we stagger through life and no one notices. No one smells it. No one sees it. No one sees the effect that it's having on our lives.
Amen.
I ended up in Providence Hospital. One of many times I ended up in Providence Hospital. Usually my trips to Providence Hospital were preceded by this statement. Hey, watch this. Anyway, I'm in Providence Hospital again. And this was an occasion where I had a lung full of water. And I had been walking around like this for I don't know how long. And some women that I work with came over to my machine to do a quality check. And one of them dropped a pencil. And I bent over to pick it up for her, and I could not come up. The pain was so I couldn't straighten up. I grabbed the table, I pulled myself up, and the two of them, and Cornelius is sitting next to me because he know both of them. I'll tell you who they were after the meeting. They're not fellowship people. But they looked at me and they said, listen, youngster, you have to go get some medical help. You're turning gray. I was probably 25 years old. So I did. And they took a chest x-ray. And the next thing I knew, I didn't know that they could put you on a gurney and go that fast. They said they'd never seen that much lung in water in an uncollapsed lung. They cut a hole in me and stuck a tube in me. And they had this plastic thing for the fluid to go into. Filled that up. They were grabbing trash cans. It's just pouring out of me. Temperature shoots up to 105. I'm in intensive care. I'm 25 years old. And this is a direct result of my alcoholism and all the side dishes I was doing as well. I mean, that's how I live. And my uncle came to see me. And he said to me, "You too young to drink like this." Who? Drink? Now I have a bottle of beer. He used to call me Boney. Boney, you too young to drink like this. Look where you at. And I'm walking, don't nobody know. And that's the obsession Dr. Bob had. Don't nobody know. So how can I go make amends? I'll be ruined. Would you write the word fear in your book, please? The thief in the night. The thief in the night. Fear. Fear. You know what they used to say about Dr. Bob? You want to know if anybody knew about his drinking? Dr. Bob was a proctologist. This was the joke in the hospitals in Akron. Dr. Bob, of course, being a proctologist, the joke was, you bet your ass when you go to Bob Smith, because you never know whether he'll be drunk or sober. That was the joke in medical circles in Akron. Everybody knew. Let's continue. Why, he argued, should he lose the remainder of his business only to bring still more suffering to his family by foolishly admitting his plight to people from whom he made his livelihood? He would do anything, he said, but that. At this point, the only hospital that would allow him to practice was City Hospital, which is out on East Main Street in Akron. Some of you know where it is. That was the only hospital left in Akron that would allow him to practice. And if he blew that one, as his wife Ann said, as they were done, they were going to lose everything. Okay? So this is where Dr. Bob is at. Fear, right, has gripped him again. Let's continue. Being intrigued, however, he invited our friend to his home. So Bill was staying at the, just give me a little history, was staying at the Mayflower. Henrietta Cyberling arranged for Bill to stay at the country club. If any of you have been to the gatehouse of the Cyberling estate, you know that right as you come up Portage Path, there is a country club right to the left, still there to this day. It's beautiful. They arranged for him to stay there. I think he stayed there 10 days, roughly, something like that. And at the end of that 10 days, he moved in with Dr. Bob and the kids. He went to 855 Ardmore at that point, where he was to stay for the next 3 months. We will talk more about this stuff later, but let's continue. Sometime later, and this is after Bill is staying over at the house, and just as he thought he was getting control of his liquor situation, he's sober. Now, he ain't made no amends, but he ain't drinking, right? He went on a roaring bender. So everything that Bill's asked him to do up to this point, he's done. He's praying. He's doing his reading. He's done all the stuff that Abby gave Bill. Dr. Bob is doing all of it, except he won't make amends. So it came time for the American Medical Association convention in Atlantic City. Dr. Bob said he wanted to go. His wife, Ann, was dead set against it. She said, "You ain't strong enough." No, Bill did not think it was a good idea. Dr. Bob said, "Look, I'm sober. I haven't been sober this long. We're talking 3 or 4 weeks, maybe. I could find out exactly how long. It wasn't long. But he said, I can't stay in the house forever. I got to road test it." Okay? So what do we got here? We got untreated alcoholism, right? White knuckle sobriety, hanging around the house, ain't making no amends, still full. And without amends, what am I? Still full of fear, still full of guilt and shame, right? Still spiritually blocked. Spiritually blocked. What do we do in steps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9? Right? We begin to clear the channel. And in 10 and 11, we keep it clear and improve our conscious contact with God so that we can be of more service and maximum service to God and those around us. So Dr. Bob has not done that. The channel is still blocked. He is still blocked from the sunlight of the Spirit. He gets on the train to go to Atlantic City, and in his own words, if you listen to his talk in Detroit, 1948, he said, I was drinking before the train left the station. We didn't even get out of Akron. Drank all the bourbon on the train. Drank all the bourbon on the train. Hit Atlantic City, don't even remember what went on. Put him back on the train, sent him home, carried him off the train, and laid him on the platform. Found a card in his pocket, called his office. His nurse and her husband came and got him, took him to their home over in Cuyahoga Falls, called the house, and Bill Wilson came to get him. So that's what happened. Okay, no amends, obsession still alive. Start drinking as soon as he left. Do you believe that he knew he was going to drink before he left? Yeah. I'm pretty sure he did, didn't he? I'm pretty sure he did. That obsession was still alive. Let's go on. For him, this was the spree that ended all sprees. Right? What does that mean? He hit what? He hit bottom. Now, let me say this about bottom. Bottom is in the gut. Bottom is not always in external circumstances. I had a heart attack and died in 1984. You would have thought that would be my bottom. What? I was to drink another 8 and drug another 8 years. The bottom is in the gut. If the bottom was in outside circumstances, nobody would ever go to prison more than once, would they? They'd be like, that's it. All right, I'd have hit the bottom, right? How many people do we know got multiple numbers, right? The bottom is not an outside circumstance. It's a thing of spirit, isn't it? It's in the gut. Let's continue. He saw that he would have to face his problem squarely. In other words, what does that mean? He would have to do what Bill was telling him to do. He would have to face his problem squarely, that God might give him mastery. Not that he would be able to stay sober on his own. It said that God might give him mastery. He realizes that the problem is his inability to access God's grace. His inability to gain access to the sunlight of the Spirit. It was there. He just had to get out the way. And isn't that what those steps are designed to do? To get me out the way. I love the way my boy Ralph said, grow God, shrink me. Grow God, shrink Ken. So Dr. Bob said, I got to face this thing squarely. That means honestly and with full and sincere effort. Okay? So he surrendered. He surrendered and he became willing to do whatever he was told to do. He became willing to get better, listen to this one, under somebody else's direction. He became willing to get better by following someone else's direction. Would we call that sponsorable? Prior to that, he was not. He was not willing to follow direction. He was not willing to go make amends. So he's still doing what? He's still under his own direction. He became willing to get better under someone else's direction. So that's a question that to this day, I got to ask myself as a sponsee, because I have a sponsor, and it don't matter how long I've been sober. Am I still willing today to get better under somebody else's direction? I can only speak for today, because I ain't living yesterday and I ain't living tomorrow. But today, the answer is yes. It is yes. And I will say that for the most part, I've stayed that way. I haven't always liked what I've been told, but I've been doing this long enough to know that I have never suffered as a result of following the direction of somebody whose spirit has been awakened as a result of the steps. I have never suffered for that. I've suffered by my own hand, by following my old ideas, my old self-reliance, my old fears, that those are the things that will keep me from being sober. My own dishonesty. Those things will keep me from being sponsorable. So am I willing to get better under somebody else's direction? This is how I feel about it. I better be, because I ain't less alcoholic than I was when I got here. I'm not as close to picking up as I was when I got here, because recovery is progressive. I told you before, I haven't had a conscious thought of a drink or a drug in over 26 years. I have not. But I tell you this, if I stop doing what I've been doing, I will again. I've been here long enough to know that. Once an alcoholic,
Always an alcoholic.
thank you, Sandusky. Thank you, Sandusky. All right, let's continue. One morning, he took the bull by the horns and set out to tell those he feared. Would you circle the word fear? We again identified the thief. We identified the thief. Those he feared what his trouble had been. He found himself surprisingly well received. Oh, and here's this. This is a surprise. And learned that many knew of his drinking.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Wow. What a surprise. Stepping into his car, he made the rounds of people he had hurt. He trembled as he went about, for this might mean ruin, particularly to a person in his line of business. Do I trust God or not? Right? In We Agnostic, it said, God is everything or else he is nothing. God either is or he isn't. What was our choice to be? And trust me, it is a choice. He made a choice earlier to follow his fear. He made a choice here to step out on faith. Do I believe? Do I believe? The second step deals with belief. And it says we came to believe. I didn't go from point A to point B, but by taking the actions that were given to me, and by imperfectly, which is what everybody does, seeking to follow this path. See, God begins to demonstrate in our lives when we give him access to our lives. And the more he demonstrates, the more I believe. But I got to start somewhere. I came to believe that this would work for me because it worked for you, and you're like me. That's the first belief that I had. We agnostics talks about our capability, for we all have faith. You had faith. If you got loaded, it was going to make you feel better, didn't it? You had faith in the bottle, the pipe, the needle. You had faith in them things. You had faith if you had enough money, you would have no problem. Did we not have faith in a lot of stuff? What I found out is I have faith. All human beings have the measure of faith. I have faith, but it was misdirected. I had faith in the wrong thing. My faith wasn't in God. My faith wasn't in no power greater than myself. I was my own power. And I like to destroy myself. So Dr. Bob is stepping out on faith. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care what the situation looks like. What is the basis of unbelief? It's when I'm believing on something and the circumstances outside or around me contradict what I'm believing for. Does everybody follow that? What's going on around me contradicts what I'm believing for. I have to have faith in this power. I started to have faith in this power when I realized at some point I haven't had a drink or anything else in 2 months, 6 months. For a guy like me, not possible. Do you see what I'm saying? We keep taking the actions and these things grow. Don't try to figure out how to do it. Follow the directions. Follow the directions. The directions will get you there. I mean, it's really that simple. I don't have to come in here and rewrite the book and intellectualize over why. Those who do get, and those who don't, and it's just that simple. Dr. Bob, on this day, became a doer. It's funny if you were to hear Bill Wilson talk about that day when he brought Dr. Bob home after Dr. Bob had got drunk. Bill Wilson said, I was ready to go back to New York. He said, I was sick of it. He said, I really was. He said, I was just sick of it. And Ann said to Bill, he's got a surgery to do tomorrow. And if he loses City Hospital, if he doesn't show up, we're done. Because this is the last place that'll allow him to work. Would you please help get him in condition to go do this surgery? Walking him up and down Ardmore Avenue. I can see him today. When I sit in Dr. Bob's house, I look out the window. I can see him walking him up, trying to sober him up. Get some coffee in him, right? The next day, take him, get him a bottle of beer so he can stop shaking. That was the good old days when your sponsor bought you a bottle of beer. They don't do that no more, right? Bought him a bottle of beer so he could stop shaking and go in and do this surgery, right? And it was after that Doc went out and started making the rounds when he left the hospital. So they were back at the house, right? Waiting. Where is he? Where is he? Where is he? He's going to come home in a cab. Where is he? Where is he? Where is he? He don't show up. A few hours go by. Bill Wilson told Ann, that's it. He said, I'm going back to New York. He's drunk. But what would you think? You would think he's drunk, right? Cab pulls up. Bill goes to the window. Ann says, how's he looking? Bill said he ain't staggering. He's looking pretty good. Dr. Bob came in. They said, where you been? You been gone all day. He said, I've been out starting to clean up this mess. He never drank again. Never drank again. Let's continue.
Amazing.
At midnight, he came home exhausted, but very happy. Highlight this, he has not had a drink since. And he didn't till he died. As we shall see, he now means a great deal to his community, and the major liabilities of 30 years of hard drinking have been repaired in 4. Would you circle that? It takes time. It takes time. But the major liabilities of 30 years we repaired off about pretty much done in 4. That's pretty good, isn't it? That's pretty good. But you don't make a mess overnight. It takes some time. Give yourself some time. Give yourself some time. Okay? But life was not easy for the two friends. Plenty of difficulties presented themselves. I got this highlighted. Both saw that they must keep spiritually active. What would spiritually active be? What is God's will for me? Well, for me, is to love God and love people. The book says maximum service to God and the people about us. That's the same thing, isn't it? It is to be loved. So we need to find somebody to help. God's will active. So we need to keep spiritually active. Dr. Bob said they were sitting at the table one day and he looked at Bill. He used to call Bill Wilson Willie. And he said, Willie, I don't think we're going to stay sober sitting here talking to one another. We need to go find somebody else to work on, right? So let's see what they did. One day, they called up the head nurse of a local hospital. They explained their need and inquired if she had a first-class alcoholic prospect.
First class.
Right.
She replied, yeah, we got a corker. He just beat up a couple nurses. Goes off his head completely when he's drinking. But he's a grand chap when he's sober. I got this highlighted. Though he's been in here 8 times in the last 6 months. 8 times in 6 months. Understand he was once a well-known lawyer in town, but just now we've got him strapped down tight. And who are they talking about? AA number 3, old Bill D. Bill Dobson over in Akron.
Was it Dobson or
Bill Dobson said he couldn't even get home from the hospital without drinking. He said, ain't even no sense in me leaving. I can't even make it home. Just can't stop. Right? So they got him strapped down because when intoxicated, he's violent, right? So this is the guy they want to go see. Here was a prospect, all right, but by the description, none too promising. Sometimes you let somebody think they just too far gone, right? 8 times in 6 months? Are you kidding me? Right? The use of spiritual principles in such cases was not so well understood as it is now. So this is the beginning of the flying blind period of Alcoholics Anonymous. Everything's pretty much trial and error at this point. You got 2 guys sober. They've got a series of actions. They're not the steps. Steps haven't been written. They ain't nowhere near being written. A series of actions that they've gotten from some Oxford group folk, and they've been able to obtain and maintain sobriety. Bill Wilson for 6 months. Dr. Bob, at this point, Bill Dodson's AA birthday was the 4th of July. So Dr. Bob was early June. So Dr. Bob's sober roughly a month. Bill Wilson about 7 months when they go see Bill Dodson. Okay? So they're both still really new, and there's no written program or anything really like put in place in terms of a process to do this. So the use of these spiritual principles is just not well understood. But one of the friends said, put him in a private room, we'll be down. They put him in a private room. Bill Dodson thought they did that because he was dying. He didn't have enough money. Private rooms were expensive. He didn't have enough money for a private room. They got this private room on Dr. Bob's say-so because he was a doctor over there. Bill Dodson said, they moved me to a private room. I thought to separate me from everybody else because I was dying, right? So when these guys show up to see him, his eyes are this big and he's waiting on the bad news. 2 days later, a future fellow of Alcoholics Anonymous stared glassily at the strangers beside his bed. Who are you fellows? and why this private room. I was always in a ward before. Put a star by this. Said one of the visitors, we are giving you a treatment for alcoholism. A treatment for alcoholism. And I can guarantee you they didn't tell him go to 90 meetings in 90 days. I can prove that because there weren't any meetings.
So Bill had 7.
What they bought him
Bob had 1.
was a spiritual program of action that had been shared from Ebby to Bill to Dr. Bob and now to Bill Dotson. That is the treatment for alcoholism. Okay? And that's different than clinical treatment or any other kind of treatment that we know. We're giving you a treatment for alcoholism. They were talking about the actions that today are our 12 steps. Okay? Let's continue.
So God inspired.
Hopelessness was written large on the man's face as he replied, oh, but that's no use. Circle the word hopelessness, please. What we got here is a good candidate, don't we? Hopeless, desperate, right? We got us a good candidate. We ain't got nobody sitting up there saying, oh, it ain't that bad. We got a man strapped down to the bed saying, you guys are wasting your time. I'm too far gone. Oh, but that's no use. Nothing would fix me. I'm a goner. The last 3 times I got drunk on the way home from here. I'm afraid to go out the door. I can't understand it. I can't understand it. Wow. Now, when Bill, Dr. Bob was a physician, and Dr. Bob said, you know, there was no training when he was in medical school for alcoholism. They said if somebody got a drinking problem, you prescribe them some bromide, which would be like bromo seltzer, alcohol, something, right? And give them a lecture and tell them to cut it out. Now, basically, that's what they did. That was the medical way that it was handled in the doctor's office, right? So when Bill came to talk to Dr. Bob, remember, Bill Wilson left New York, and he was the first person to have all the pieces of the puzzle. He had the disease concept of alcoholism, as we call it today, or the doctor's opinion from Dr. Silkworth, right? So he knew what the problem was. He understood obsession. He understood the phenomenon of craving. Over here, we got Ebby, who had bought him a solution. Now, Dr. Silkworth said in the doctor's opinion, I don't have a solution for you. I know what it looks like, but medicine can't produce, right, what the powers of good that lie outside our synthetic knowledge need to produce. Over here, you got Ebby, who don't know what's wrong with him, but he knows he feels better hanging out with these oxygen people. So Bill Wilson was literally the first person to have the entire, every piece of the pie. So Bill Wilson goes to Akron armed with something no one's ever been armed with before. No one's ever been armed with before. So he shares it with Dr. Bob, right? Dr. Bob, being a medical man, was like, yup, that makes sense. That's me. How do you think he stayed in there with him for 5 hours? That's me. When they came out of that library at the gatehouse, he said to his wife, he understands. He understands. When's the first time somebody talked to you and you understood? Just a question. So we're going to finish up this paragraph. Right. For an hour, the two friends told him about their drinking experiences. Okay, put a star by that. That's where we're going to stop, actually. But they told him about their drinking experiences. Bill Wilson told Dr. Bob about his experience. Again, what Dr. Silkworth had told Bill, talk drunk to a drunk. It's worked from Bill to Bob. Now it's Bill and Bob to Bill D. All right? So we're going to pick up there next week. We will talk more about that formula, or really the outline of the book and the classic 12-step call as we continue this story. So we'll stop right there. Damon, you mark it. All right.